Alright, fragrances that smell like Christmas. Well, I've got 20 fragrances here that feature the notes of pine and fir. And the way I'm doing this video is ranking it from number 20, smelling the least Christmas-like, even though it features pine or fir, and then going up to number 1, which totally smells like Christmas to me. So if you want to find out about these fragrances, then please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian, and yes, today I'm talking about 20 fragrances that smell like Christmas, from least Christmas to most Christmas smelling, and Christmas is around the corner. And one of my favorite things around Christmas was when that fresh Christmas tree was purchased and dropped in the living room, and that once that Christmas tree was put there, and the aroma starts taking over the room of that whole Christmassy green piney kind of fir, woody kind of smell, green and stuff, all of that comes to mind. So I really love the way this note smells. It just reminds me of the holidays. But as I said, I've got 20 fragrances here. We're starting off with the least Christmas smelling fragrances that features pine and fir to the most. Before I get to the fragrances though, if this is your first time tuning into the channel and you still haven't subscribed, please do click the subscribe button below and also click the bell so that you'll be notified for future videos and giveaways. Let's start off really quickly here. First fragrance I'm going to talk to you about is HISTOIRES de Parfums 1828. This is a fragrance that seems fairly masculine leaning, and it features pine for sure, but it features some camphoric notes and lots of citruses, so it might come off smelling a bit like a classic men's style of fragrance, or something like more barbershop leaning kind of fragrance. But it's a who's who of citruses with lots of pine and eucalyptus in the notes. It also has some spices in there, some nutmeg and black pepper with some light smokiness, and then of course incense comes in, vetiver, cedar as well. But it's lots of eucalyptus with loads of pine tree note, citruses, grapefruit, tangerine, nutmeg, black pepper, incense, vetiver, cedar. Lovely fragrance. We're starting off, as I said, with the least Christmas smelling fragrance that features pine or fir. Moving on to Comme des Garçons ZAGORSK, this one right here. This one smells very pine-like, but more like if you ever come to California and go up to the mountains and near Tahoe, and you can smell that fresh forest smell in there, but with lots of like fire burning or even church service with the incense going. That's what ZAGORSK smells like to me. Out of all of the fragrances in that incense collection, this to me smells the most of Christmas because it features a prominent pine note. That's why I featured it here. But because it has all this kind of like fiery, smoky kind of incense-like notes in there, just reminding me of church, because after all, this is the incense series. I've put it at number 9, but you guys check it out if you like this idea. But ZAGORSK features pine, incense, birch, olibanum, cedar, hinoki, iris, violet, and pimento. So there's some floral touches, powdery touches, and then some spicy touches, but it's very, very woody. So this is Comme des Garçons de ZAGORSK at number 19. At number 18, it's ANNICK GOUTAL or GOUTAL Paris ENCENS FLAMBOYANT, this one right here. So once again, we've got a very woody, green, incensey kind of experience here, but this time this fragrance features balsam fir. So kind of similar to the Comme des Garçons, but for me it's not as incense smoky. It's a little more woody for me in comparison to the Comme des Garçons. That's the experience I get with this one, but it's a similar idea. It's spicy, it's very woody, but it's balsam fir, incense, mastic resin, nutmeg, cardamom, black pepper, pink pepper. A very, very lovely fragrance. I'm almost out of this bottle right here. As you can see, I should buy a new one. The fragrance house is no longer called ANNICK GOUTAL, and the bottles are no longer in this particular bottle, so I need to dig up another fragrance with this one. But this is a lovely fragrance, but definitely has a Christmassy kind of smell, but not necessarily over the top Christmas smelling. So this is GOUTAL Paris ENCENS FLAMBOYANT. Next up, going to the house of Pierre. This is Morning in TIPASA. Here we have a really, really fresh, piney kind of fragrance, but kind of once again leaning masculine, with kind of a citrusy, sweet kind of, I guess, a men's cologne style fragrance experience. At least for me it is. But there's very, very much sexiness with this one that I really, really like. I come to love with this particular house, Pierre Guillaume's fragrances. Very underrated house, but if you ever, you know, explore this house, you'll realize how great the compositions are. And this one is also really a wonderful fragrance. It's not a deep, dense fragrance. It wears fresh for me, but you've got that pine in here along with some herbs. So it's featuring pine, mint, lemongrass, honey, bergamot, and jujube blossom, which I don't really know what jujube blossom is. There's a little bit of a floralcy in there, but for me it's mostly the pine, mint, and lemongrass, because lemongrass is an herb, it's an aromatic, but there's a lemony touch to it. Wonderful fragrance, check it out. I guess it doesn't really remind me too much of Christmas, but when I smell the pine, when my nose you know, picks up the pine, then I start thinking of Christmas. So this is Pierre Guillaume Morning in TIPASA at number 17. At number 16, go into the house of Atelier Oblique. This is Moonsai. This is their latest fragrance, and this features loads of pine, but this is to me more of a resinous, deep, rich, woody kind of, you know, pine experience with coffee thrown in. The color kind of goes into that kind of coffee direction, but it's a really wonderful fragrance. And this house is very underrated. You should go catch my video of this house exploring all the different fragrances I shot recently. But Moonsai, as I said, is the latest fragrance from Atelier Oblique. It features pine, elemi, patchouli, geranium, coffee, oak moss, leather, rosemary, bergamot, vetiver, papyrus. Lots of stuff going on. They're very dense, thick notes, so the fragrance wears dense and intense and very woody and resinous. So that is Moonsai from the house of Atelier Oblique, and that's at number 16. So next up, going to the house of Papillon Perfumery. This is Spell 125. So this is the latest fragrance from Papillon Perfumery, and it's a bit daring. It's a little animalic as well, but it's got loads of pine. So it's got loads of pine with Olibanum, so it kind of feels like it's going to go in the direction of something like ZAGORSK from Comme des Garçons, which I just spoke about. It also features ambergris to give you that kind of animalic kind of experience with this, which kind of you know, cuts through the pine and Olibanum experience, because I find Olibanum kind of connects with pine a lot, because you can see those little you know, incense resins kind of growing on pine trees. I've noticed it quite a bit. So I feel like they do connect, but the ambergris kind of, since it's so much in here, it does have a little bit of an animalic quality, so it kind of stops you in the tracks and you go, okay, now I see what's going on with this particular fragrance, because it does get animalic. But once you get past the ambergris, it's all kind of woods and aromatics and florals and resins, etc. So it's pine, Olibanum, ambergris, hemlock, sandalwood, ylang ylang. You definitely pick up the pine, you definitely pick up the Olibanum, and you definitely pick up the ambergris. So that's pretty much what the fragrance is all about. If you like a piney and animalic with Olibanum, definitely check out Spell 125. Very resinous and very pine-like. You can smell the pine forest, but it's almost like a pine forest next to the sea. You get kind of like that kind of animalic ambergris kind of ambery aquatic kind of smell hitting your nose at the same time. Next fragrance is a fun fragrance from the house of I guess I would call this from the house of Maurer and Words, the folks behind 4711. This is 4711 Aqua Colonia Intense Awakening Woods of Scandinavia. Really a fresh take on fur, really lovely to wear. It's refreshing, it's not intense, it's very clean, green, and you know, pine and fur like, that I quite like. It's very lovely to wear. But it features fir, Olibanum, patchouli, rose, osmanthus, jasmine, bergamot, pink pepper, and coriander. If you want a fresh pine fir kind of experience with a fragrance, this is definitely satisfying. It's almost kind of like a fresh fizzy cocktail to wear. So it's very refreshing, but it's got all this green stuff and piney-like, fur-like experience. It doesn't fully remind me of Christmas, but then it kind of does as well. This is 4711 Aqua Colonia Intense Awakening Woods of Scandinavia. Long name. Next fragrance, go into the house of Bottega Veneta. This is Pour Homme. So this one, to me, is very piney, and it doesn't necessarily scream ultra Christmas, but that pine note that's in here, it's supposedly Siberian pine, totally reminds me of Christmas, but it's connected with or melded with leather, so it's mostly a pine and leather experience. And it's going to remind me a little bit of another fragrance I have from a niche house coming up in a bit, but that one goes more Christmassy to me than this one does. But it features Siberian pine, leather, juniper, Canadian fir, clary sage, pimento, patchouli, labdanum, bergamot. It's basically, you know, pine and fir together. That's like the Christmas experience, the ultra Christmas experience. But it's very woody, lightly, you know, green experience, but leather and spices and aromatics all mixed in together. A classy fragrance from Bottega Veneta. It's Pour Homme. That is at number 13. At number 12, going to the house of Diptyque. This is Le Trois. Brand new fragrance. I haven't hardly used it. I just picked it up last October, but I really love this one. I'm glad to have it in my collection. This is more of a resinous take on pine, so you've got lots of resins, but there's some sweet resins in here. You've got myrrh and olibanum, which is like frankincense, and there's some spices thrown in as well. This is a wonderful fragrance, and once again, you've got that pine tree experience, but kind of going into a more of a Christmassy, religious kind of an experience with pine tree, myrrh, olibanum, spices, caraway, rosemary, myrtle. So caraway does appear, but it's not strong. It's also a very dry experience, not syrupy, because it's all these resins and spices with the pine tree. Again, I get a very religious experience with this one, but it's not as smoky as I think it would be like the Comme des Garçons ZAGORSK. So it's definitely a resinous pine Christmassy experience. So Diptyque's Le Trois at number 12. At number 11, going to the house of L'Artisan Parfumeur, it's Feu d'Absinthe, this one right here. So this one's such a lovely fragrance. I just wish it was a more concentrated and thicker version of this fragrance, but it smells so good. Reminds me of Christmas because it's got the fir needles and also got spices mixed in together, kind of like a holiday wormwood absinthe liqueur and pine tree kind of mixed together. Really a wonderful fragrance created by Olivia Giacobetti. If you don't know this one, please do check it out. I love it, but I will warn you, it is a little on the light side. At least to me it is, but it's perfect for those folks that don't like intense fragrances. But it's definitely green with pine needles, wormwood, balsam fir, star anise, incense, nutmeg, and angelica. Really beautiful creation, wonderful creation. I'm just wondering, maybe perhaps if it is you know, a little more concentrated, like it might not smell as good, because this smells really fantastic. I just wish it was a little thicker, but it definitely has a very Christmas-like experience with spices, more aromatic and green spices. Anyway, Feu d'Absinthe from L'Artisan Parfumeur at number 11. The further we go up to number 1, the more it's going to remind us of Christmas. And at number 10, going to the house of Montclair, this is Pour Homme. This one to me smelled of Christmas right when I smelled it. It's got a major pine note, and it reminds me, as I said once again, when I go up to Lake Tahoe here, up to the mountains where people go snow, you know, skiing and stuff like that. There's lots of snow. This is kind of like that smell up there, because Montclair is a ski jacket clothing kind of a brand, and they kind of inspired or created these fragrances with this kind of like snowy accord, according to them. And this definitely has it in comparison to the woman's. But this has lots of pine, green notes, clary sage, sandalwood, vetiver, cedar, amber. So it's very aromatic, it's very green, it's fresh but woody, and it's got that kind of frostiness, you know, like when you see snow-covered pine trees, the experience is like that. I'm not saying it's like a very amazing fragrance, but it has this kind of a very Christmassy, snow-covered pine trees kind of experience. So Montclair, Pour Homme at number 10. Alright, moving along at number 9, going to the house of ANNICK. This is Idlewild, this one right here. This is, to me, like a very pine forest, fougere, barbershop style fragrance that's really wonderful, and it really does remind me of the forest up in the mountains, the pine trees, the fir trees, and things like that. Whatever that smell is captured here, but kind of in that barbershop-y style a little bit, which is really wonderful. So what Idlewild features fir, cypress, rhubarb, grapefruit, tea, lavender, woody notes, and artemisia. So there's a major green touch here, but that smell reminds me of Christmas. Just that forest, a little cool and crisp, and that smell when you wake up, especially like if you're camping or something, definitely captured here. So Idlewild by ANNICK is at number 9. Next up at number 8, finally have my bottle, going to the house of Molton Brown. This is Jubilant Pine and Patchouli. I bought this on Black Friday when they had 25% off sale. in their entire store. Plus I used my Rakuten cashback deal when I click through Rakuten, and I get like a percentage back. So I'm happy I got it. I'm a little bit let down with it because it's not very piney as much as I want it to be. Pine is there, it's the most prominent note, but there's a lot of other notes that are kind of like mixed with it, so it doesn't come off very pine-like even though it's there. But still, it reminds me of Christmas. There's a Christmassy touch, but just imagine bringing your Christmas tree and you have that smell along with other smells inside your house. Perhaps you're cooking for Christmas, so you're smelling the food a little bit, and there's some fruits there and things like that. So the whole entire Christmas experience, and I kind of wanted a little more of Christmas tree experience, even though it doesn't matter. It's at number 8. Features pine, juniper berries, patchouli, cinnamon, amber, red fruits, vanilla, and musk. So you've got that kind of like Christmassy kind of experience, as I said. Lots of pine note, but other notes coming, like you experience the light red fruits in here. Perhaps you have a table of like a bowl of fruits nearby that you're smelling the aroma from. Cinnamon, kind of like spices you're cooking with, like desserts for Christmas. It's a great experience. I just wanted a little more pine is what I'm trying to say, but either way, I'm happy with what I have. It's jubilant pine and patchouli from the House of Molten Brown. Now this next fragrance, I'm so happy I bought this. I recently purchased it from Lucky Scent. I've been looking at it on their website, and I am really happy. I got it for one reason, because it has a pine note, but I also for what the fragrance is supposed to do. It's supposed to calm you. It's a stress reliever. Go figure. This is from the new company. It's called Forest Lungs. Now, I wore it 3 days, and I'm featuring it here because it is, it smells like Christmas, but it does have this effect on you. It's calming, it's relaxing. I don't know what it is, but you spray the fragrance and you kind of walk through your cloud and you kind of like breathe in that smell. And it has a very calming effect. It's very strange. It did it to me. But Forest Lungs by the new company is featuring pine, vetiver, cedarwood, benzoin, patchouli, bergamot. It's not necessarily overly intense, but the smell is definitely like a Christmas tree forest. It's very woody, it's green, a little spiciness thrown in there, and some resinous touches, but I really kid you not, the fragrance does relax a little bit and calm you. It's definitely a stress reliever, and I think we need some stress relief during the holidays when there's a lot going on, and I think this is great. I'm so excited about it. I've worn a lot of it because I've worn it for 3 days straight, and I've sprayed a lot. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm gonna definitely check out their other 2 fragrances because I like this little concept. Either way, try the new company's Forest Lungs, and as I said, I bought my bottle from Lucky Scent because they have it there. Next fragrance, going to the House of Memo Paris. This is Russian Leather, and I was mentioning earlier there's another fragrance that reminds me of this. I prefer this over this because they're similar, they have similarities, but this one to me smells more of a pine forest with lots of leather again, and this is a kind of a frosted, snow-covered pine forest that I really like. Visually it looks beautiful. It's a great visual to look at, snow-covered trees, pine trees and things like that, and you experience that kind of frosted pine kind of experience in here. But it's pine tree, cypress, leather, lavender, basil, rosemary, and cedar, so it's very woody, it's very aromatic, it's got lots of pine and fir, plus it's got the leather. So basically with these leather fragrances, it's Russian leather inspired by this kind of like snow-covered Russian pine forest. You start out with those notes and it kind of settles to a leather. Great fragrance. It's Russian Leather from the House of Memo Paris at number 6. Really smells like Christmas to me. The next fragrance going to the House of ANNICK GOUTAL once again, or GOUTAL Paris. This is Nuit Étoilée. This is the men's bottle in Eau de Toilette. There's also a feminine bottle, which I don't know how they are doing it now with the current brand because they've rebranded, but this features some great notes and it really reminds me of a pine forest. Really wonderfully does. Pine, mint, fir balsam, citron, immortelle, orange. Great fragrance. So good. It doesn't necessarily have a lot of deepness. It's not a very deep, rich experience, but the smell is phenomenal. It's a great fragrance with the mint. The mint is dry, it's aromatic, it's herbal, contrasted with the pine note. It smells like the pine forest, like a Christmas tree, along with the fir balsam. You name it. It's a great fragrance. Wonderful fragrance from ANNICK GOUTAL, one of my favorites from this house. And this is Nuit Étoilée. As I said, we're getting closer to the top, it's smelling more like Christmas. This next one's from the House of Imaginary Authors. This is Cape Heartache. This to me smells of, like I said, Northern California, up in the mountains near Lake Tahoe. Smells like literally a pine fir forest. That whole smell, it's frosted, it's clean, it's fresh, it's around the holidays, and then there's some strawberries growing nearby, and you smell it like a strawberry jam, or somebody's making a strawberry pie or something, because this has some strawberries in it. But it's an interesting contrast. You got the pine and the fir contrasted with lots of strawberries. It might come off kind of weird to some people, but I quite like it here. It's featuring fir, strawberries, pine tree, woody notes, vanilla together. There's some sweetness here, and there's some fruitiness, but as I said, it's got this green woods pine fir experience, you know, contrasted with the strawberries. So that is Imaginary Authors Cape Heartache at number 4. Next up, going to the house of Imaginary Authors once again. This is A City on Fire. And even though this doesn't seem like it should be on this list, to me it smells like a Christmas tree being burned in a fireplace, or you know, you're burning some Christmas tree, pine tree, fir trees, and you know, you've lit it on fire. Or maybe you've got the Christmas tree and you've got a fire going nearby, you know, in your fireplace in your home. Or maybe you're camping around the holidays and it's cold outside and you can smell the fire burning everywhere in the cabins and things like that. I don't know. It's a great smelling fragrance. I really love it, but it's very, very smoky. It's over the top smoky, but I like it because, as I said, it smells like you're burning Christmas trees, and that's what kind of reminds me of Christmas about it. You know, it's cold outside, you're burning the fire, you got a fireplace going, it's a cabin, it's snowing outside, all that kind of stuff comes to mind with this one. But A City on Fire features burnt match note, labdanum, juniper, nard, and fruits. So yeah, it does have an ambery experience, but it's very, very smoky, and it smells of woods burning. You know, it's a really, really wonderful smell. I love it. So that's why I put it at number 3. This is Imaginary Authors, A City on Fire. And it's funny, 3 fragrances created by Josh Meyer of Imaginary Authors. This next fragrance from the house of Dassine is Winter Nights, and Josh Meyer created this for Dassine. So 3 fragrances in a row. I just think this is totally a Christmas smell. A wonderful, wonderful Christmas smell. It's got coastal forest, driftwood, bonfire, cardamom, tea, lavender, wild musk. Absolutely smells like Christmas to me. It's a green, foresty experience, like you're walking. It's dark. There's a little bit of a driftwood, kind of like, there's a little bit of an aquatic thing. Very, very light. You can smell the coast or something, but there's that bonfire that's got a fieriness, but it's not as fiery or smoky as A City on Fire is, but it definitely has it in here. But it really does remind me of Christmas. The smell of the forest, or Christmas trees, lots of them together with a little bit of a fire and a little bit of a coastal kind of a marine smell. Wonderful fragrance. Winter Nights at number 2. And my number 1 favorite Christmas smelling or fragrance that smells like Christmas is Serge Lutens Fil en Aiguille, this one right here. This is the ultimate in Christmas smelling. It's Christmas smelling with the pine tree and the fir, but also it's resinous, it's ambery, and it's fruity as well. Plus it has a little bit of incense smoke running throughout it, because it does remind me a little bit of church, but you know, that's kind of light. No, I don't think it's light. It's there, but I think the whole combination is just beautiful. Just a really, really beautiful combination. Fil en Aiguille is my favorite fragrance from Serge Lutens still, and it features pine, incense, dried fruits, balsam fir, spices, bay laurel, and that bay laurel comes in, so there's a bit of a green touch here, but it's a frosty pine balsam experience. Smells of Christmas trees with a little incense. There's those dried fruits, there's a fruitiness, and there's a bit of amberiness in here as well. Wonderful fragrance, and this is my number 1 favorite Christmas fragrance, or my number 1 favorite fragrance that smells like Christmas or Christmas trees. Anyway, those are my favorite fragrances that smell like Christmas trees or smell of pine and or fir or balsam fir. What are your thoughts about these fragrances, and do you have a favorite fragrance that I did not mention to you here that smells of Christmas or Christmas trees or features balsam fir or pine? Let me know, put a comment down, as I'd like to find out. If you have these fragrances and you enjoy them, let me know as well. Other than that, guys, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions or comments, please list below. Please like this video, please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye. Alright, we've got 2 bonus fragrances and kind of a tie experience. I'm going to be featuring Aesop's Huile. Do you know this fragrance? Even though it doesn't feature the notes of balsam fir or pine, it has cypress, and I think the experience is very Christmas tree-like. Very much so. It features cypress, olibanum, woods, vetiver, oak moss, spices, and thyme. So it's a very spicy, woody experience, kind of green as well. Smells of a kind of a cool, crisp forest of pine trees and balsam fir trees and things like that. Wonderful fragrance. And then a lot of people compare these two together. This is Comme des Garçons Hinoki. Once again, similar idea, similar fragrance. This one does feature pine for sure as a note, but I think this one does it as well. I just think it's not mentioned because I get that from it. This one is definitely drier than this. This is a little more wetter experience, or like a little ambery or syrupier experience. But Hinoki features Hinoki wood, cypress, pine, woods, camphor, cedar, olibanum, vetiver, oak moss, thyme. These are just basically the green, piney kind of foresty, balsam fir like smells that I really like. And even though they don't feature those notes, this one especially, I wanted to feature them or highlight them as a fragrances that smell like Christmas to me, because they really do, but more about the Christmas trees and the pine trees and things like that. Either way, this is Aesop's Huile. I hope I'm saying that right because I've been corrected before, and this is Hinoki from Comme des Garçons.